Hi, Holly. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks so much, Kim, for having me. I'm excited to connect with you and to your listeners. And I know you and I have been talking, we're friends, and both have this passion for helping women with emotional eating. So I'm excited to jump in.
I am excited too. And yes, listeners, this is my new friend, and I'm so excited to meet her because not only does she get exactly what we're talking about all the time, but she's just a great person and she has such a great background. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a teaser. She worked for the FBI, and we're going to bring in some FBI tactics into emotional eating. But first, I have a question for you. What do you wish that the women today are going to walk away with after we finish this conversation?
I think my biggest wish would be that everyone listening just realizes that you're not alone, that this is more common than you think. And you're completely normal. And
Yes.
and we can get to the other side.
Yes, and that's the biggest thing is we want to get to that transformation of being able to stop it, and I know you're going to help so many people today. And before we get to your background, because that is extremely important, all of us have our stories and our backgrounds, and we actually all overlap a lot. I'd love to know, what is the one thing in our space in emotional eating that's really bugging you right now?
Oh my goodness. And it probably sounds so ordinary, but the whole calorie in, calorie out space, in that we're not talking about what goes on behind the scenes. We're not talking about underlying root cause. We're not even talking about metabolic health. We're just breaking our nutrition down to a math equation. And I mean, if you're eating Oreos all day long, that's not okay. If you're constantly snacking and just obsessed about food, that's not okay. Like, we need to have these deeper conversations beyond just a number. And I know you're very passionate about that, as I.
Yes, we actually talk about a lot of the same things. And what I'm curious about too, because you just really did open it up for women to relate to. But again, before we get into the nitty gritty here, women sometimes with that term emotional eating don't quite connect. So can you tell women what are the behaviors that they might be doing right now? And this is why you need to listen to the episode today.
Yeah. And you know what, Kim, before I jump in, I actually wanted to share something first. And that is because I know this is important to me for your listeners, is that how much time and effort you put into this podcast. And I really want to encourage everyone to leave a 5-star rating and review to help you reach more people, because it is so important to get this message out there. I left a 5-star rating and review this morning, and it would really mean a lot to me as a guest that your listeners could do that as well.
Thank you. I have so much gratitude for you, my friend. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And to answer your question, I'm not a fan of labels, because when we put a label onto something, we start to identify with that label, and then our brain creates this box around the label and the identity. We can call it, and I throw the terms around interchangeably, but we can talk about emotional eating. Eating when we have really big emotions. We're stressed, we're overwhelmed, we're angry, we're lonely, we're bored, and we reach to food to comfort ourselves. We can talk about stress eating when we're stressed and overwhelmed and we're eating to take the edge off. We can talk about, food addiction, meaning it is just all encompassing. It takes over your life. And, the problem with that is, okay, we have to eat to live. It's not like it's drugs or alcohol or gambling or something like that where you can just not do it. We have to eat. And then, there's binge eating where you're just eating mass quantities and in a short amount of time, and then having that kind of shame and guilt on top of it. I mean, there's a lot of different labels that we can use, but I think at the end of the day, it's when food is becoming the comfort. Food is that Linus blanket. You're reaching for food to help soothe an emotion, to take the edge off, and instead of just sitting in that discomfort.
So true. The consequences start coming in. When that is happening, it's not just not being able to deal with the emotions and covering those up and escaping. We start having physical consequences to that.
Yeah.
And I think you explained it extremely well. I think that it's very clear. So I know so many of you can resonate with this. I'm feeling so much like I can resonate. And so now that really leads me to I want to hear a little bit more. I got a little bit from you when we started to get to know each other, but how does someone go from, I'd love to know about your childhood, because I think how you were as a young woman plays a big part, because we all share a lot of these things that we were like when we were younger, to how you got to FBI Chief of Staff for Counterintelligence, hello, to an emotional eating coach. So you just go on and share whatever you want to share, because I know it's going to pull us closer into relating to your story and why we really need to look at this.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be so much fun to share because the story has so many different twists and turns. But I want to do a PS on what we just talked about first. And something happened. And I think something happened in our generation. And I honestly think it was the smartphone that really, I mean, we're hardcore. Like, we grew up feral, drank water out of hoses. We were babysitting our brothers and sisters when we were 10 years old. I mean, what happened to where we're not able to just be okay with these uncomfortable emotions? And if you think about it from the perspective of, we're at a grocery store, we're at the checkout line at Target. And if you were to look around, just kind of peek your head up and look around, everyone is on their phone. What is everyone doing? They're on their phone. We have lost the ability to stand in line for 2 minutes or 3 minutes without jumping on our phone, because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to just stand there and look around, or maybe, grab a magazine off the rack or something like that. Yeah. And if you think about it from that perspective, there is no shame in emotional eating, because we have been programmed. We can't even stand in line for 2 or 3 minutes without being okay with those uncomfortable emotions. How are we supposed to deal with the big stuff of every day? Not just like big stuff, but that chronic everyday stress and overwhelm of just one thing after another piling on top of each other, and without reaching for food. And we have really lost that ability. And, so many women think it's about the food, and it's not about the food. It's about everything else. And I remember, I will never forget this. One of my new clients came to me and she said, Holly, she goes, like, I get what we're going to do in your program, but when I don't have food, how am I supposed to be okay with these big emotions? And it was such a profound question, because to me, it just kind of seemed automatic, but not realizing we have such an epidemic of not being able to face them and not having the skills. Or we do actually have the skills, we just have to remember what they are. Because we grew up pretty feral, we grew up pretty hardcore. We just have to remember who we are and pull them back out again.
I love that. I'm going to PSS on your PS and just say, I think the other thing was we were so used to entertaining ourselves. I think the phone is such a big part of it. And we had hobbies and we had other things that we did. And I was just talking to our community, and we had to really come up with what were all the things that we used to love to do. And some of the women couldn't even remember, because, and we'll get into this later, not only were they always taking care of somebody, but they were always finding a way to entertain themselves on the phone instead of painting, crocheting, gardening, whatever the things were. So that is a beautiful point. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to start when I was 10, and I love to do jigsaw puzzles. My family had this huge dining room table, and I got bored doing 1,000-piece puzzles. So I would take 3 different 1,000-piece puzzles, dump them all out on the dining room table, mix them up, and then put them back together. So that was me at 10 years old. I couldn't just put patterns together. I had to make it harder and harder and more challenging and more challenging. Fast forward, senior year in high school, I wrote a paper for my psychology class, and I did a behavioral analysis on Charles Manson. I was 17 years old. This was several years before Silence of the Lambs came out. So this was just something that was new and interesting and exciting for me. And fortunately, my teacher saw that potential and wasn't just like, oh my goodness, this weird girl, and shut it down. Because, I mean, what 17-year-old reads a behavioral profile of Charles Manson?
Oh my gosh.
So he encouraged me to get into psychology. And that's really when I had this dream to work for the FBI. But this is before the internet. small town USA, middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. And how am I supposed to figure out how to work for the FBI? I mean, we didn't know things back then. So the dream just kind of got pushed to the side. Fast forward, I ended up in the Washington, D.C. area. I ended up spending 20 some years there before moving back to Pennsylvania. But after 9/11, during 9/11, actually, I was doing some consulting work and for a big consulting firm down there. And after 9/11 happened, they had a big call for security clearances. Got my security clearance, and a former manager of mine's like, hey, we've got an opening down in Quantico. My background is in project management. So they brought me in to oversee some of the brand new capabilities of electronic surveillance that the FBI was doing. So that's how I got my start. And then so we had the 9/11 Commission report and the WMD Commission report that basically said, FBI, you suck. Here's all the things that you need to do. And if you remember back then, the agencies weren't talking to each other externally. The agencies really weren't equipped to talk to each other internally. And the internet and databases and systems and things like that were relatively new. And government agencies were just, we were dinosaurs back then. So we had these commission, the WMD and the 9/11 Commission report that came out of Congress. So when they transferred me up to headquarters, part of what I did was to take these recommendations as a project manager, to take these recommendations and then help put the pieces back together, the exact same thing that I did when I was 10 years old in the dining room table. And I guess they liked what I did because as I was still in my 30s, female, not an agent, and an outsider. And they brought me in as the GS-15 Chief of Staff for Counterintelligence to run their program management office. So it was such a huge honor to be able to do that. And we ran all of the data analytics for counterintelligence. So we would, and a lot of this was still manual back then because again, we were kind of dinosaurs with systems. So a lot of this was still manual, and we looked at counterintelligence data. We looked at the patterns. We looked at the trends. And then we created threat analysis, blind spots, and really how to identify and neutralize those threats. And then we provided those recommendations to the head of the division. So that was a lot of fun.
I think that's great. So tell me also because I know all of this connects directly to how you help your clients overcome emotional eating. Where in your life did you feel like you were relying on food? And what was going on with you that made you feel like that was the thing to turn to?
So emotional eating had been a through line, as long as I can remember, my entire life. When another story back when I was a little girl, I was a little chubbier than some of the other kids on the playground and a lot slower. So, and I was also the youngest in my class. And one of the bullies on the playground decided it would be a fun idea to call me It, because when you play tag, I was slow, I couldn't catch anyone, and I was always It. And so that was my nickname, not just little, but they carried that nickname all throughout school. So food was always a place of comfort. Even just growing up, when I was little, food was always and it was always comfort food. It was junk food. It was, pudding pops and Velveeta cheese and, and cookies and ice cream. Ice cream was always a big one. In college, I gained 40 pounds in my 20s. I was about 150 pounds and overweight and just ate and ate and ate. That's all I did. And it was the pizza and the French fries and just everything. And then with my career in consulting at the FBI, it was just such a constant through line through my entire life. Even going through a divorce, 3 years ago, it was a through line in my entire life. Fast forward, so I had already left the FBI and become a health coach. So I am a health coach and I'm eating healthy all week long, Monday to Friday, and then I would eat a pint of ice cream, get a pint of ice cream out for the weekend, for my treat, for my reward. Because we're told everything in moderation, right? So I'm like, okay, I eat healthy, and I justified it, right? It's that justification, that's important. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have half or a third of the pint on Friday and then Saturday and then Sunday, which makes sense. And I don't think anyone would argue with that kind of moderation. But what happened was I would eat the entire pint on Friday. And then I would eat another pint on Saturday and another pint on Sunday. And it was to the point where, I mean, this was literally every single weekend. And it's almost like, and maybe your listeners can relate, if you're, I mean, just pulled in a million miles, like all the different directions in the career and the family and just that comfort food. And for me, it was ice cream was a big one. That's the one place that takes the edge off. And so there was one Sunday in particular, I don't even remember eating the pint. I mean, I just inhaled it. And I'm in the groove at the bottom of the container, like the groove, like the cardboard groove, trying to get that last few bites out. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm staring at the bottom of the container. I'm like, Holly Bertone, what is wrong with you? I mean, why can't you eat like a normal person? You know, you claim to be all healthy. Monday through Friday, you're showing up, you're being this health coach, and then you're eating 3 pints of ice cream without any kind of self-control. I mean, you can't even take a few bites and put it back in the freezer. Like, what is wrong with you? And that was a big realization for me because, you know, I didn't want to face the truth. I didn't even taste it. That was the thing. So you've got this staring at the bottom of the container, you've got the guilt, you've got the shame, and really feeling like a fraud as a health coach. Because this is not okay. This is not leading by example. And I remember going upstairs to my closet and looking at my clothes and realizing I'm not even wearing my clothes anymore. And it wasn't, I mean, I was a few pounds overweight, but it was just enough that nothing fit. And it was just enough that I was realizing I don't have any control over this. And that's when I realized that it doesn't matter how much you weigh, whether you're thin or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how healthy you eat most of the time. Is that if you are struggling with emotional eating, that food noise is always going to win. And that's when I realized, looking at myself and then thinking about all of the clients that I had, I'm like, you know what? We're all struggling with this. We are all struggling with this. So that's when I became a little FBI obsessed, putting the FBI hat back on. And all of my training was based on what I learned in health coach school. Just class after class after class. And I mean, I took tons of certifications because I wanted to, you know, be the best health coach I could be. But I'm realizing everything that I learned in school doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, why is that? Yes. And back to what we were talking about, you know, the weight loss industry, they focus on the calories or even just, you know, the cardio and the weight and the food. And what it actually is that it's about addressing those root cause triggers and the automatic eating patterns. That is what is driving the behaviors. And those patterns control everything. So if we want something to change, we actually have to rewire those patterns to work in your favor. And that's when everything clicked for me. That's when everything clicked for my clients. And that's when I realized I need to build something that's built on the food monsters that I overcame personally, that's built on all of those skills in FBI counterintelligence. You've got espionage and spies, you've got cake day at the office, and threat is a threat. You know, and then I combined all of that with the brain science of neuroplasticity.
Yes, and that is the key. We have to be able to rewire because we have been doing the same thing over and over again. So before we go on to talk about your actual 3-step program, I want to talk about a couple of things that you brought up because they're gold. And one of the things that you said, it doesn't matter if someone doesn't love their body and they feel like they're not in a small enough body. It doesn't matter if someone is in a small body. It does not matter. It affects all of us. When I got divorced and I went from one end, the divorce diet of not eating anything, to the binging when my kids went back to their dads. And I was able to hide it because I was a marathon runner. And so when I started posting about emotional eating, someone actually wrote to me, a college person, of course it was a man, and said, I've never known you to be fat. You don't have a problem. And it's so sad because that emotional dinging that's going on is internal. It doesn't matter what the outer body is doing or looking like. It starts on the inside with those root causes. And then there was something else that you mentioned with freshmen gaining weight in our freshman year of college, and mine also continued during college. And we used to think the freshman 15 or the freshman 20 or the freshman 40, we thought all of that was because we would be leaving a stable home of home-cooked food, going to the dorm and eating pizza, drinking beer. You know, I did all of the above, by the way. And, the fact that we were free and I could go buy Reese's peanut butter cups. But the reality is we're dealing with new stressors as a 17, 18-year-old going off to live on your own by yourself for the first time is very challenging, and you're getting caught up in a lot of different situations. So I think that now we can look back and say, oh, it's not just the food changes, because some people always ate like that and now they're just eating more. So yes, I love that. I would love to know now, how did you take the tactics that you learned in the FBI? Because this is really important. The patterns, the blind spots, and the threats. Those are such good words. And then you put them into 3 different categories to help your clients.
Yes.
So can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, let's get into that. You had said something, and it made me think when you had said about the man reaching out to you. I mean, I work with women in midlife. And as I share my story more and more, I was surprised at first, and now it's kind of normal. How many health coaches are coming up to me and saying thank you? Because we, I think, are supposed to have this perfect kind of exterior. And like you said, a lot of us can hide it because of our lifestyle. And there's a lot of shame around emotional eating for anyone, but especially when you're in the public eye and you're trying to lead by example.
Yes, and it's your identity.
It is. It is your identity. And to be able to just say, this is normal. This is very normal, and you're not alone, regardless of who you are. I mean, you asked that question in the beginning, and that is one of the biggest messages that I want to get across today. So I did want to share that.
Thank you. Yeah. No, but it's so important that we share that, because we hide in isolation on some of these problems. And that is why you and I both have programs to help people, is because we do not want other people to suffer. And it's funny because even when you and I talked offline, we both were saying there's so many people dealing with this. It is so important for us to say, hey, it's okay, because it's very shameful to feel out of control. And there's something very stigmatizing about feeling out of control with food. And then there's something else I'm seeing in our world, is the shaming and the judgment that people have over people and their bodies, and they're assuming by their bodies how their behavior and lifestyle is, when they're not really understanding what the underlying part of it is. And you have said this many times online. Everybody's going to find out later where to find you on Instagram. This is not willpower. This is not a willpower game. Yeah. This is not something where you can say someone's lazy, because you and I are highly educated, motivated women. Our clients are highly educated, beautiful, amazing women who have businesses, who are working, who are caretaking, and yet they're still dealing with this.
Yeah. And the majority, I mean, I know you too, the majority of the clients we work with, I mean, they're high achieving, successful women. You know, they're great careers and families and all the things. And then they're like, why can't I figure this out? Mm-hmm. And you're
it's
like, and they know, like you say, okay, what do I need to do to lose weight? You're like, this, and this. I mean, we can rattle it off. Everyone can rattle it off. So where's the disconnect between, okay, I'm supposed to do this versus how does it actually work?
Yes. And it makes me think of math, because that's what I did before this. I was a high school math teacher. The math equation is not even fully calories in, calories out, we know. We know that we need to be healthy to lose weight, because losing weight doesn't always equal being healthy mentally, physically, emotionally. So, yes. So thank you.
I mean, I got a breast cancer diagnosis when I was 110 pounds and a triathlete.
Yeah.
Exhibit
Good figure, right? Yes.
Yeah. It's the number on the scale does not dictate. It's just a number.
No, it is just a number. So tell me, there are 3 S's in your world.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear about this.
Let me back up just a second before I jump in, because I want to set the context so that everyone listening can actually understand what these 3 steps do. Researchers at MIT found that the moment that a craving hits, your brain has already made the decision. It's about half of a second. And your brain already made that decision. I want the food, and there are no other options on the table. And then dopamine kicks in. And we think of dopamine like a reward chemical, but it's actually an anticipation chemical, because dopamine kicks in. Dopamine doesn't kick in when the food is in your mouth. Dopamine kicks in that space between I need to have the food and your mouth. And that's anticipation. When that fork is on the way up to the mouth, that's when the dopamine kicks in. So when you think about it from that perspective, your brain has already started that reward process. So that's why everything is so automatic and obsessive when you think of the cravings and the snacking. And you're like, oh my goodness, why can't I stop? Why doesn't willpower work? Well, that is why willpower doesn't work. We've got two parts of our brain, system one, system two. System one is our kind of our reptilian limbic system. This is our automatic emotional way that we make decisions. System two is our prefrontal cortex, our logical, analytical, willpower, calories kind of system in the brain. And the diet industry focuses on calories and macros and the scale and willpower. And that is a system two solution to a system one problem. So, and you think about it from that perspective. So I grew up in the country. I never learned to parallel park a car, ever. I lived in the city for 20 some years and still never learned to parallel park a car. Would walk blocks. Fast forward 2021, I bought a brand new Hyundai Kona. And that Hyundai Kona, I know, like crazy. This was my post-mom mobile.
I love it.
But the Kona had a backup camera. It didn't even have like a park assist. It just had a backup camera. And all of a sudden, I could parallel park the car. It's not because I spent hours training to parallel park and taking lessons. I just now all of a sudden I have a tool that allows me to see differently and allows me to parallel park. And that is exactly what we're doing. So it's a three-step process. And the first step is see it. This is where we're going to use FBI-inspired pattern analysis to actually uncover the hidden patterns and the triggers behind emotional eating. Because what we need to do first is understand why we reach for food when stress hits. So when you think about what I just shared with the MIT study, with the dopamine, and with the two systems in our brain, if you think about our brain and food and emotional eating like a path in the woods, you have one path that has been decades of habits, patterns, survival, and we have just worn this path down in the woods over and over and over again that food equals comfort. So we've got this path. So step one is basically we're getting out the gloves, we're getting out the work boots, and we're like, okay, we are going to create a new path in the woods. And what we are doing is identifying that new path. That is see it. We're identifying that old path and then creating that new path, which is see it. And so a couple years ago, I actually had a keynote speech at MIT. And the plane was delayed 3 hours. So I just pulled up my laptop and I'm working and I'm watching everyone around me. They're losing their mind because the plane is delayed. They're running to Dunkin' Donuts. They're getting bags of donuts and bags of bagels. They're going to the bar and drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is obviously me observing them, but this is what we do with ourselves. We start to observe from that neutral perspective. What are our behaviors? What are our patterns? Because once we know that, then we can actually do something about it. So step two is stop it. And this is where we learn FBI-inspired tactics. We're going to interrupt that cycle in real time. This is where you're going to actually stop the cravings before they take over and without willpower. So when you think about that path in the woods, we've got that old path that's worn. We're starting to make the new path, but that new path is still a work in progress. I mean, there's roots and thorns and spiders and snakes and all kinds of things, So we're making this new path in the woods. So we're coming up on that fork in the road. And we're telling our brain in that moment, do not go down the old path like you're automatically going to want to do. You're going to want to go down the new path. So this is that dopamine interruption. This is right where that happens. And we use this with something called countermeasures. And we use countermeasures and counterintelligence. And basically all that it is, they are tactical interventions that they are going to intercept that craving before the craving takes over. And it's almost like, I like to say this is just like potty training a puppy. So when you first get a puppy, you got to take them out once an hour outside to make sure that they don't go potty on the carpet. And then you're like, oh, good dog, good dog. Yeah, give them the treats and everything. This is exactly what we're doing with our brain. We're like, okay, we just basically need to train our brain not to pee on the carpet. That is all we are doing. I mean, and it sounds so simple, but it is the exact same behaviors. And thinking back to what I shared, you're standing in line, you've got these, just uncomfortable, like, oh, I don't want to stand in line. And then we've got these big emotions when we're eating, right? So what we are doing is interrupting that. We're interrupting that. I love this example because I think it's relatable. Is let's say you're on a diet and you tell your spouse, don't bring any sweets in the house. So you have a bad day at work, you come home, there's cupcakes on the counter. What typically happens? You grab a cupcake, eat one, maybe two, maybe three, depending on how they're minis or regular size. And then you get the guilt and the shame and just that blah feeling. You feel bad about yourself. So what do? You yell at your spouse for bringing home the cupcakes because it's their fault. This is what we have been programmed to do. And this is where that intercept comes in. And when we move to step 3, what happens in step 3? You have that bad day at work. You come home, you see the cupcakes on the counter, and you're like, okay, they're just cupcakes. You don't have that magnetic draw. They don't have that pull. They don't have that obsession of, oh my goodness, I have to eat it. And there's no other options on the table. That dopamine hit. Okay, so that's what we're moving into step 3. So step 3 is shifted. This is where we're going to actually rewire those automatic responses so that your relationship with food is a lot healthier and it actually lasts. So again, you come home from that hard day, you see the cupcakes on the counter, and there is no reaction. So there was and this is where, you think of that path in the woods. So this is where, you've got that old path, all of the decades of habits and patterns and behaviors. This new path is now your new path. You're coming up on that fork in the road and your brain automatically, system 1 automatically goes to the new path. The new path is the sparkly path. The new path is the shiny path. The new path is the path that we like to go down, where we are actually in control around food. And there was a study. Are you familiar? I love this study. Are you familiar with the karaoke study by Alison Wood Brooks out of Harvard?
No, tell us about it.
Oh my goodness, I'm obsessed with this study. So, actually, it's karaoke, and she did the song "Don't Stop Believing." I mean, come on, does it get any more of an 80s anthem?
We have to, yeah.
So basically, she had them in 3 groups of people, and they were to sing "Don't Stop Believing" into a karaoke machine. The first group was the control group, just the normal, nothing different. They just sang. They had a 69% accuracy. The second group, they were told to say, "I'm nervous" several times and then go sing. Their accuracy dropped to about 53%. But here's what's cool, is that you had a group that says, "I'm excited." This is an 80% accuracy. So theirs improved, right? We're talking, the impulse control, the decision making, the self-regulation, like this is where this is actually changing our brain structure. And I mean, you think about it like a side of a coin, nervousness and excitement are the exact same emotion, just in a different context. So when you think about it, they're literally the exact same emotion. It's just how they were feeling it. And when I say automatic, you're like, okay, Holly, what does that mean? I share the cupcakes on the counter, but when we think automatic, think back to, okay, you're running late, you're trying to get out of the house, you're trying to get everyone else out of the house, you're running late, you can't find your keys, you can't find your glasses even though they're on top of your head, you can't find your phone even though you're holding it, the dog poops on the carpet, spouse dropped a mug and it crashed on the floor, whatever, right? It's just one of those mornings. But there is a 100% guarantee you're still going to walk out of that house. Your teeth are going to be brushed, and probably some coffee in your hand too. Why is that? Why is that you can have the absolute worst morning, running late, all the things, you are still going to make sure teeth are brushed, coffee's in your hand. All right? Because it is automatic. And that is exactly where we want to be with emotional eating, that we can it's not even making a decision, it just becomes automatic. It's just a part of you that food does not have that control over you. And I talked about my just obsession with ice cream. And I have ice cream in the freezer now because every once in a while I'll make some Instagram, reels or something, and whatever, I have sometimes I take a bite, sometimes I don't. But I can literally take a bite of ice cream, something that I would devour the entire container. And I can take a bite and just put it right back in the freezer. There's no reaction whatsoever. And that's exactly where we want to be.
That is exactly where we want to be. It's interesting you said that because Sunday we had, as we are recording this, it's coming out later, but we're recording it right after Memorial Day weekend. And we had a big celebration. 15 people were at the house. And it was 3 birthdays, graduation, somebody announcing they're having a baby. So there was so much food there. And potato chips, carrot cake, and these little bundt cakes that were just beautiful. All this food. And in the past, I would eat some of the sweets. I'm a sugar person. I know some people dig into the chips. I know some people love all the salt and all that. I am not an ice cream person, but you put frosting in front of me, you put something gooey, chocolate, fudge, that's just going to send me over usually. So it's interesting, when I was at the party, I made a conscious decision to have some of the cake because I knew it would taste amazing, but I was able to pass on a lot of other things. The common thing that clients will say to me is, I have it and then I can't stop eating it. And I think that's what we are helping people with. And I want to hear your thoughts on, how do you help someone have it and then move on from it? And again, it's the whole 3 steps of it that really need to happen, because I was able to get up today. There's 2 little bundt cakes and a half a carrot cake in the fridge, and it has not even crossed my mind till we just started talking about food and ice cream. So I'd love to know from you your thoughts, because women will ask me, well, do you think it's better for me to abstain from these things? Or do you think it's better for me to have moderation, kind of like an intuitive eating? And of course, we know everyone is completely different, but it's not really, is it really about that? Let me ask you.
This is such a great question, Kim. And yeah, I was the corner, like the Costco cakes or the sheet cakes in the office. I was the corner. Give me all of the icing. Like frosting,
I knew we had a lot in common. You're my sister.
And it was the big corner, like give me the biggest corner. And then it was waiting for everyone to leave the whole thing and then go back, open up the cake, get out like a knife and scrape all the icing on the bottom, put that on a plate, and then eat that.
I hear you.
Yep. So when I say I know emotional eating, I love this question. So I want to touch on it a few different ways. Is that, and it really does depend. And it's important for the women that we're working with to actually understand where they fall on that spectrum. Because some people are all or nothing people. Some people actually can get to a point where they can have a bite and put the fork down. I had a client one time, she came back and she said she was out to dinner and they had chocolate molten lava cake. Chocolate molten lava cake. And I said, how did you do? And she said, I took one bite and then I put the fork down. I was so proud of her. But she knew that she could have that bite. Whereas some clients, it's just not even worth it, because that one bite will send them spiraling. And it is on a spectrum. And even on the other side of this, I like to talk about intuitive eating, and intuitive eating has merit, but I feel like intuitive eating works the best when you're on the other side, because until you get to that point, those obsessive thoughts are still going to be there. And it's hard to separate the obsessive thoughts from the intuitive eating. But once you get to that other side, intuitive eating is brilliant, right? And I love how it works. But we all are on a spectrum, and I think it's important to know where your limits are and how you are. And some people might be all or nothing people. Some people might be, I'm going to take a bite or two and put the fork down. And there is no judgment. But when you know what kind of person you are and you go through this process, you're going to have so much more success, because you're like, okay, I know how to work with my brain and my body instead of against it.
Oh, I love that. I think also when you are working through the see it, the stop it, the shifting, you're working through creating the identity of that person that you want to be.
Yes.
With food, because our identity isn't just our job. It isn't just what we do. It's truly who we are. And I always had that disconnect. We were talking about being the health coach, being the healthy one, as I put it in air quotes for the audio people, the healthy one, and knowing that I wasn't being myself in all areas of my life. And so I love how your program can actually help bring out the most authentic person, because when we're not truly ourselves, we fall apart somewhere in our life.
Yeah.
And you were talking about being health coaches too. Think about the fact that the entrepreneurial road is very challenging. And health coaching, having your own business, is challenging. So I get why it would be a part of so many of our lives as we're trying to work through something new. You know, we're always learning something new, by the way.
Yeah.
I love it. So what, Holly, have I missed? What else do you want to share with the listeners that I did not ask you?
There are 8 questions that your listeners can ask themselves. If they're listening, they're nodding their head, they've been listening to your podcast, you know, they're kind of nodding their head. They're like, yeah, I really feel like I struggle with this. To ask yourself these questions to determine, is this something that maybe it's just kind of, I'm dealing with something and it's something temporary or something minor versus, yeah, this is something that I probably should look into, you know, to getting further help and actually really getting to the other side of this. So the 8 questions. Number 1, am I craving comfort food more often than not? Obviously subjective. Number 2, do I eat when I'm not hungry? That also can be, I'm not fueling myself properly, but we're looking at this as a collective. Number 3, has food become my primary coping mechanism? Back to the Linus blanket, back to those big emotions. Number 4, do I eat to take the edge off? Meaning, is food my Novocaine? Number 5, do I feel guilt or shame after eating? That's a big one. Number 6, are my eating habits out of control and or does food interfere with my life? Number 7, am I gaining weight without any other major changes? And I always like to say, oh, this one, bonus points if you're blaming your hormones. And then number 8 is, do I actually know that I'm doing this, but I feel powerless and I don't know how to fix it? So if your score is 3 or higher, I would definitely recommend looking into working with you, Kim, working with me, reaching out to one of us and saying, yeah, how can I get to the other side of this?
Those questions are gold. And because again, going back to the very beginning, we're going to circle right back to the beginning. We were talking about whether or not people understand if they are emotional eaters or not. And even though we both work with midlife women, men are dealing with this too. Men and men, they have just as many struggles. They have just as many things going on. And it's interesting because if you are not sure, think about all the other coping mechanisms. We downplay food in society for some reason because the other things like alcohol seem so big. But scrolling, shopping, retail therapy, you know, all the other things that we might lose ourselves in, just even binge watching shows to escape. So I really appreciate you, Holly. You are full of just so many treasures today. Listeners, I hope you just connect with Holly. You know that we are here for you. Holly, I want to make sure that everyone can find you. So please list off everything so that everyone can come and connect with you and say hi.
Well, absolutely. And Kim, I really want to do something special for your audience because they are such a big part of your community and staying to the end of the episode. And I've got 2 gifts for your audience. But before I dive in, I do want to make sure that I explain who it's for. So these gifts are for you if you are a high-achieving woman in midlife and you're not in control around food. You're stress eating, you're mindlessly snacking, you're actually hijacked by those food cravings and the food noise. And you've just kind of been listening today, you're nodding along, you're like, yeah, I really want to get control over this. So it's called the Emotional Eating Tactical Blueprint. And it's got 2 things in it. So the first is a psychological profile. I analyzed 1,791 cravings profiles. I put on my FBI hat, I sliced and diced the data, and I created an actual personalized psychological profile where you're going to uncover your number 1 emotional and stress eating trigger to actually understand what's driving those triggers so that you no longer feel victim to them. And then the second thing in the bundle is something that is only offered inside of my paid community, my paid program, but I'm going to give it to your listeners for free. And this is called the Crime Scene Files Emotional Eating Edition. So this is the actual tactical tools to intercept the cravings and the triggers before they happen. So you've got the psychological profile to start to address the why behind the scenes, and then you've got the crime scene files to get those tactical tools. But the cool thing about this, I actually designed it true crime style in true FBI fashion. So if you're like love the true crime podcast or the CSI shows on TV, you are going to get totally geeked out with this bundle. So again, it's called the Emotional Eating Tactical Blueprint. It's again totally free. So go to my Instagram. That's the best place to connect with me. And it's at holly.bertone, Bertone. And it's holly.bertone. And DM me the word blueprint, and I will personally send it over to you.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those with our listeners. Those are very wonderful gifts. I also love that you have put so much of your previous life into the FBI tactics, putting those into what we're doing. And of course, who doesn't love true crime? I mean, really, if you do, you're my friend automatically.
You're my people.
And yes, you're my people. And you make it fun too at the same time. Holly, I want to thank you because we are both emotional eating coaches. And for us to be able to connect, double down on sharing with people, I appreciate you. You are so compassionate. You are so intelligent. You're so relatable. And I am so grateful that you came and shared with us today. Thank you for being here.
And Kim, thank you so much for having me. Again, just the graciousness that you have had and just being able to really team together to help women. And I absolutely love our friendship, and I'm glad we had this time in this space.
Thank you. And listeners, make sure you nourish your entire life and give yourself grace today.